Hey there, and welcome to Marriage Talks, a real, authentic, and relatable podcast about how to thrive in your marriage.
Here you'll find helpful information shaped by a biblical worldview on all things marriage related, sex, money, parenting, and so much more. We are Michael and Elizabeth, and welcome to our show.
I was waiting for you. I was like, can I catch it? Can I catch it?
You got it.
You got it.
Welcome to our ultra cheesy intro.
Now, before we get into our topic for today, we want to let you know that today's episode is sponsored by the Marriage Talks Patreon page. There is so much good stuff there. The link is in the show notes. Go check it out. And if you decide to become a part of the Marriage Talks Patreon page, you will help further the ministry of Marriage Talks, which is such a blessing to us and we know will be a blessing to others. So thank you for checking it out.
And we also want to remind you to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. That is the number one search app for podcasts. And it helps us to kind of be brought to more people and more eyes and be shared to more people. So share us and tell all your friends about us. Please.
Thanks, guys.
Please, oh please.
All right. What are we talking about?
All right. So we had a very popular episode really early on in the Marriage Talks lifespan.
Yes.
I think at that point we were not even called Marriage Talks yet. It was
No, we weren't.
early.
Oh my gosh, it's just so weird.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen those first 4 episodes, check them out. It's kind of like a
Seen or heard.
yeah, or heard.
Heard.
You can see with your ears. But yeah, so we talked about on our podcast hosting platform, we get an idea of who's listening to what and how popular things are. So we noticed that our dating episode from very early on was very
Episode
popular.
number 2.
Was it that early?
Number 2.
Oh, okay.
If I'm not mistaken, number 2.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very popular.
Yeah, and of course, it's kind of an important topic in a marriage. It's like one of those things. Our big point for that was, dating doesn't stop once you put a ring on it.
Yeah, date your spouse.
Yeah.
Do it. Oh, my word. Yes. So we just wanted to kind of revisit the topic of dating and talk about kind of some different and deeper ideas about that and why we're so passionate about it. And there's a reason that, I think couples who have a healthy view on marriage are so passionate about dating your spouse. There's a real good reason behind that. So we're going to get into all that.
This is funny the way you said that. It's like other couples are passionate about dating your spouse. Like, well, you should be more passionate about dating your spouse than those other couples. No, I'm just kidding.
That's not what I meant.
No, I know. Yeah, if you spend any time around us in real life, we're almost annoying about this. We're talking about, it's almost like during this episode, maybe take a shot every time we say weekly date night. Don't do that actually, because we're going to say it a ton.
Yeah, don't do that.
But it's like one of the pillars of building your relationship.
It's something that we are very passionate about it for a reason. And we didn't start doing weekly date nights until a couple of years ago, and our marriage suffered for it. And there's other things that we have done in conjunction with that to build a strong marriage. But when we are very careful about having intentional time together that is not melded with attention for something else aside from your spouse, it really impacted our marriage in a healthy way, a very, very healthy way. And it really just changed, I think, the way we saw our marriage and the way we saw each other. And so we are very passionate about weekly date nights because we know that they can be transforming.
Yeah. Well said. All right. So hit us with the first thing.
Okay. So we want to talk about the mindset of dating, like how you actually view dating your spouse. And I think a lot of times people believe, once you say I do, you're done. You no longer need to pursue this person. You got them. We said our vows. We're good. And that mindset is not healthy. It's completely false. And I think, honestly, I think subconsciously, before we started doing weekly date nights, that was just something that, I don't know, came natural.
Pursuing?
Just stopping the date nights. We didn't make it a priority. Once we got married, we would go out on date nights while we were dating. and while we were engaged. But then once we got married, it was just kind of like, I think like when I say you, I'm really talking to myself. Like I kind of, they say, oh, you're married now, you old married couple, kind of thing, like where it's just like, it just falls into these weird stereotypes, like these fictional stereotypes that people just are like, oh, that's just what married life is like, not going to have any fun anymore. And you're never going to have sex and all this stuff that's not true.
The old ball and chain.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like subconsciously, like I fell into that mindset of dating. It's like, oh, we're already married. Like we don't date anymore. But that's not true.
Yeah. And you'll have a lot of people actually will say, like, how long have you been married? And you say 2 years. And they'll say, oh, you're still in the honeymoon phase, expecting you to like fall out of it. Whereas like, yeah, maybe the honeymoon phase will end, but it doesn't mean the like habits and things that you do as honeymooners has to go away too.
Yeah.
You should basically keep that mindset going of like, just as soon as you leave them, like you can't wait to get back together. And when you are together, you're really into what the other's doing and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. And I think that mindset of thinking, oh, once you're married, you don't have to date your spouse anymore. Like that can be a very poisonous mindset, because then you get lazy and complacent, and then you're no longer trying to cultivate a strong marriage. And then that's when, little bad habits form. And if you're not getting attention from your spouse, then you're going to seek attention elsewhere. I mean, the possibilities are endless of what negativity and evil things can find its way into your marriage. So having the mindset of, well, we're married, so I don't need to date anymore, really is, when you think about it, when I kind of analyze like, okay, where did that mindset come from? Why did I believe it? And why did I hold on to it for so long? It's really a selfish one. When you peel back the layers of the onion and you ask yourself, why? Then you can get down to a root heart condition of, why are you believing that mindset? Why did I fall into that mindset? Really subconsciously, it did not register that it was something that needed to be done in our marriage, because I don't know that we necessarily had anybody telling us that we needed to do that and that it was a healthy thing to do. And so it's a selfish thing because it takes work. It takes work to date your spouse and to set aside time, because you're sacrificing something else. So by not dating Michael, I am then being selfish, and vice versa. If he's not pursuing to date me, he is then being selfish. And so that's why I want to talk about mindset. And then we want to talk about the flip version of that, which is really the true mindset to have, which is
that dating and marriage is a continual pursuit.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's work to be done every day, and it's hard work too. You can't just, you don't fall into an excellent marriage. You have to put in the time and effort every single morning, afternoon, and evening. And some days it'll be easier than others. Like, not to say it's like a slog to love your spouse, hopefully that's not extremely hard for you, but you do have to like shut off other things and deprioritize things that might be easier. Like, you know how easy it is to turn on an Xbox and just game for 3 hours?
Yeah.
Super easy. Do you know how easy it is to just kind of, click on your iPhone and be on there for 3 hours and totally miss 10 conversations? That's way easier than, hey, how are you doing? No, like, really, how are you doing? What's bothering you? What's going well? That's going to be a lot more effort to do that. But the fruit is way better than getting the high score on Candy Crush.
Oh, yeah. 100%. And
I say that as somebody who loves Candy Crush.
Flipping through social media, it's easy because it does exactly what you want it to do, and it's asking for nothing in return. But when you sit there and you set aside a date night with your spouse, your spouse is then asking something of you. Like, it's not healthy to be give, and somebody take, and there not being an exchange of a give and a take between the two of you. And so that's why it's much harder to pursue your spouse and date them. But it's the right mindset to have. And, if you've listened to the show for any amount of time, you know that Michael and I are believers. And so when we say, it's good to continually date your spouse, it's because that's the example that Christ sets when he pursues the church, when he loves the church. He loves the body of Christ, like he loves the believers. It's not just like, all right, on wedding day, you good? We good? Okay, peace out. Bye. He doesn't say that. Thank the Lord. He is constantly there all the time for us. And that is what we are called to do for our spouse in the hard times, the bad times, the good times, the gross times, the times where we feel like we're like coasting and nothing's really, quote, exciting. We need to be there for each other. And dating is one way to do that. And that's just mimicking that relationship that Christ has with the church is how we can do that. And really, when you have that mindset, it's a selfless mindset, because then it's like, okay, I am sacrificing. I'm going to choose to sacrifice, the rom-com that I wanted to watch tonight. And I'm going to let Michael pick out what he wants for us to do tonight. And I'm going to let him kind of curate his ideal evening at home. And so therefore I don't get what I want, which is not a bad thing. I want to serve Michael, and loving him, like serving him, is one way to love him. And so that is a selfless mindset, a selfless heart attitude about it. And it's definitely hard work, but it is work that is well worth it.
Yeah, for sure. And it'll be well worth it for anybody living in your house too. That reflection for your kids, if you have kids, is amazing. Like, you can imagine the blueprint that you're laying down to for your kids to see, mom and dad, they get along pretty well. They are really intentional about stuff. And, you've already got that same blueprint for your own marriage as you grow up. If you have that in place in your own home.
Yeah, it's kind of setting up the future generations for generational blessings. And so, you take from, like Michael and I took from each one of our parents growing up, like, what is it that's something that was like a blessing to us growing up? And how are we going to continue that as a generational blessing? When people talk about generational curses, they talk about like, maybe it's like an addiction or it's divorce. Like, you want to stop those generational curses for the, like, you don't want to pass that along to your kids, which takes work. And so it's the idea of being intentional about passing along those generational blessings and stopping those generational curses. And it could be as small as like a way that maybe your parents interacted with you that you just didn't really care for, and that you just said, I want to do it differently for my family. And then that's the mindset that you have, the intentionality that you have set with your spouse. So like, we're going to commit together to do that. And so for us, just on the topic of dating, we say, oh, we're going to go out on a date tonight. And our oldest, Charlotte, she goes, where are you going? Who's going to stay with us? Like, we're not going anywhere. We're having an at-home date night, and we like to spend time with each other. And we just explain to her, this is something that we enjoy, and we do it every Friday night. And I think she's starting to kind of get it a little bit, because you can see a little smile on her face, and it's really sweet.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, I know she doesn't get like the whole thing, but just that, like, we like to have time together. But
yeah. And even on a smaller scale, just the little moments in front of your kids that are very like spousal focused. So like, you don't have to necessarily carve out 3 hours after the kids go to bed. That doesn't really help them to see it. But like, if you hear a good song, that's something from your early dating days when you were not married, and you kind of grab them and do a little dance move on the kitchen, in the middle of the kitchen, that can be really cool for the kids to see and stuff. It's like, yeah, we're kind of into each other a little bit.
just a wee bit.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
Yeah. So I think it's just important, that intentionality, and then like really getting down to like the mindset. I'm so glad that we stopped that false mindset, and we started to be intentional about creating that habit of that true mindset around dating.
Yeah. So we also want to talk about, where is your heart when it comes to dating your spouse? So when I think about having a weekly date night with Elizabeth, what is my gut reaction? And I think that tells me a lot about how I view our marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. Because when I think about I think in the time when we weren't having date night and then like, okay, what if we had a date night this week? And then my gut reaction was like, oh, I just wanted to chill out and relax and have no obligations. That for me, that's red flag waving around. You are selfish. You do not want to connect with your spouse. You are not prioritizing your marriage. That's a big red flag. And yeah, it really reveals a lot about your heart. It can be scary, but it's also really good to reveal those things.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. Like going back to it's hard work. Oh man, I've been working 40 hours this week and I've got a little overtime even, and the kids have been not listening at bedtime, and just be way easier to do something super chill that doesn't require anything from me. That can be whatever. But I get what I really need to do is really invest and be present.
Yeah, and I think the initial we haven't had a date night. We don't do it regularly throughout the week or, once a week. The initial getting that into routine for me personally was okay, I felt like I had to prepare something because I am a type A, I'm a performer, and I like to achieve. And so I was like, how can I make this the best date night ever? And when you do it every week, it's oh my word, this is too much. I can't do that every week. But the point is that Michael didn't ask for it. That was an expectation that I set up for myself that was not needed. And so it's just Michael and I, when you get down to it, we are easygoing people and we are simple people. So
what are you talking about? I want a walkway of rose petals every single Friday.
You want to set that out for yourself?
Not so much. I'll break the bank.
We just enjoy a good movie or a good show and something to drink and a snack. That is it. Every once in a while we will go out to eat and or go see a movie. But, very rarely do we get super creative with date nights that we just haven't done. And it's not because we don't want to. It's, I think, number one, deep down, we're just easy in the date department as far as expectations. But number two, when you're in a season of three littles, date night options are kind of limited because you have somebody else to watch your kids. And then, we don't have all the money in the world to spend.
Yeah. And that's even when we live in town with several
family
babysitters
yeah.
that are free that love to do it.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. So it's just recognizing the season that we're in, and we truly don't need an extravagant date or weekend away. Would that be nice? Heck yeah. But we don't get bitter about not having it. So it's just, yeah, I feel like I was jumping ahead and I just got on a roll.
Well, I was just going to say, I call that a great segue is what I would call it.
All right, segue us.
So what does a date night not have to be? And so it's really important to cover this because I think this expectation is a huge detractor to how many people are doing this and how frequently. When we say weekly date night, people go oh gosh, I can't do a date night every week. Good Lord. I mean, think of the bill. That's the thing. It does not have to be that. There's so much good stuff on TV. There's so many board games. There's
walk around a park.
Yeah. Endless ideas that are free.
Yeah.
We also have a dating on a budget episode now that I think of it.
We do.
Yeah.
Check that one out after this one.
And that's the big thing is once you kind of let go of that, $150 per time you do it mindset, you can really get creative with all kinds of free stuff. And the barrier is so much lower to have to plan it. So don't fall into the keeping up with the Joneses stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Because when you look at everybody's social media, it's a highlight reel. It is not real life. So what you're experiencing every day with your spouse is real life.
Yeah. It's I swear those people just went to Cancun 3 months ago.
Yeah. Don't get caught up in that. I think that's good, not keeping up with the Joneses, because it can be like, I just think maybe the old school like date night was that you went out to dinner because, back in the 50s, there was not stuff on television. Like you couldn't have an at-home movie night. I'm sure the programming didn't really lend itself to that.
In the 50s, it was pretty much no TV. Yeah.
Well, whenever TV came out.
I don't know.
But you know what I mean? Like we have endless technology options as far as like viewing, and things that you can experience at home, especially in a time like right now. And just, I think when you set parameters around something and you say, okay, well, we can't, like for Michael and I, we cannot go out every Friday night. It's just not a reality for us. And that's when our date night happens every Friday night. And we also don't want to tax that on our babysitters, like a weekly looking after them. Like that's a lot. They need to have their own time. And, especially like my parents, they need to have their date night. So, okay, we know date night has to happen at home. That's one parameter. We also know that date night can't cost a lot. So if we're going to rent a movie, it's got to be $5 or less, which we're happy to do. And there's plenty of free movies out there to watch as well. Or like, we can't find any good movies. Well, let's pull out a board game and let's just talk and play a game,
Yeah.
I think you just get more creative than like if there were no parameters, then you're like, well, I don't know what to choose. So it's analysis paralysis. You freeze up and you can't move forward. And I think there's kind of a beautiful thing with setting parameters to get you creative.
I definitely think that's one positive that the quarantine and pandemic has had, is that for so many months now, we've had to really reduce our expectations of our ability to go out. So you might have been going crazy in April and May of 2020. Like, I just want to go out somewhere, for God's sakes. But you have to stay in for extended amounts of time with your spouse and your kids and your dog and stuff. So either you went crazy like you thought you would, or you found a way to live with it and hopefully found some really awesome new habits and activities that you could do together.
Yeah, I think that's good. So we kind of talked a little bit about like what date night doesn't have to be. And we touched a little bit about like what our date night like is. And I think that's a good question to kind of talk about with your spouse. Like what does date night have to be for us? And that's going to look different for every single couple. And as long as it's something that's unifying you and bringing you together, like that's the whole point. It's intentionally setting aside that time to help cultivate your relationship and make it stronger and last longer. And so, we said game night, you can have a coffee night, you could do a wine tasting where you buy a couple of bottles of wine and you taste I think even like at the grocery store, some grocery stores have like mini wine bottles.
Yep.
And so you can try different things like that. And, you could we're big fans of a movie night. If you're not a TV watching kind of person, read a book to your spouse, like if you're both reading the same book or like you both love a certain series, just sit and read the book to each other. You could also exchange massages, or you could simply just have sex, which is a great activity to do on date night.
Yeah, it is a fully sanctioned event.
Do it. Yeah, it's the most appropriate night of the week, really, if you think about it.
Yeah. And it's also one of those things, if you find yourself with a frequency problem with intimacy, it's a very easy, like, hey, not to say like every time we have a date night, we have to have sex. Cause if you do it just because it's a certain night of the week, that's not necessarily going to be the best, like sparks and fireworks and all that, but definitely be more open to it. So like, things are going well. You're sitting on the couch, like the door is wide open for sex and intimacy. Yeah. So walk through it.
Yeah. And Michael and I have talked about like, okay, we should be intentional on our date night to do something like physical together, just so that like, oh, it's date night. Because for me, I think we've talked about this on another episode, but like to kind of turn off that like momming mindset and then turn on my, oh, I feel sexy mindset is not an easy transition. I have to work at that because I think as a mom, and other moms out there I think would agree, like we have like so much going on in our heads all day, every day. And so then to immediately be like, all right, turn that off. And then you got to start feeling sexy. Like it just doesn't work that way. But if I can kind of prep myself mentally and emotionally, like, thinking about Michael and just kind of all these sort of things that I can dwell upon throughout the day, that's good. That benefits Michael and I. That benefits our intimate life. And that has been something that I have worked on for years, which will be another episode because Michael and I have talked about doing that as an episode. Just the mindset of sex and things like that. But, I have to prime myself. I've got to get ready for that. I just can't like flip a switch and be ready. And, some men might be like that. Like they might have a lot on their plate. They might be in a season where like a lot is going on work-wise and it's just hard for them to turn that off mentally. When you just think about your spouse and you're kind of getting your mindset ready in that way, it really, really helps.
Yeah, I think that's definitely universal in terms of like you've got 1,000 things going through your head, and you have to put them aside to be able to be present. All right, so just in summary, the mindset behind dating your spouse is that you just have to be ready for a continual pursuit. Never give up, never surrender. Pursue, pursue, pursue. Yeah. It is the blueprint that Christ set for the church. So you can do it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. Never give up, never surrender.
Yeah. Pulling in a little Galaxy Quest and the Bible in the same sentence. You're welcome.
It's a true talent.
Yeah. And examine your heart about things. Like if you don't feel like really into a weekly date night, or at least bi-weekly, if you absolutely can't swing it, but I promise you can swing it. It's not that hard once you get into the swing of it. And it doesn't have to be a crazy big ordeal. It can be very simple, evening on the couch type stuff. So we're going to hit you with a challenge.
Our challenge is to really ask yourself, what is your gut reaction to having a date night with your spouse? Like, how do you truly respond to that? Then once you ask yourself that, ask yourself why. Like 5 times is what the standard is. Why do I feel this way? Okay, now that I feel that way, why do I feel that way? Why did I react that way? And you're kind of peeling back the layers of your heart to figure out why exactly you might have a like, ooh, I don't want to do a weekly date night with my spouse. So asking yourself why that many times, it might seem redundant, but it gets down to the root of why you might be having an adverse reaction to a weekly date night with your spouse. It's really good, important work to do when it comes to your marriage, exposing that. And if you're already doing a regular date night, maybe this week schedule something a little different with your spouse just to kind of shake things up. I think that's something that Michael and I can be better about, shaking things up. We have a tendency to just become creatures of habit. And every once in a while, it's nice to just kind of flip the switch and try something different. And so, yeah, that's kind of your challenge for this week. And our prayer is with these challenges that it helps shed light on how you can improve your marriage with your spouse. It's not to like say, oh, you're doing a bad job, because we've walked through this stuff and we continue to walk through it and have to monitor our own hearts and constantly have that check in with each other.
Yeah. The entire purpose behind, or like the genesis of this podcast was, we've made a lot of mistakes and we can help other people shortcut those mistakes to kind of just jump ahead of where we were at one point. So anything we can do to offer some advice or just talking points.
Yeah. And the challenge is, they might seem like, oh, I'm going to skip the challenge, but it's really just like, I feel like sometimes where I know I need to make an improvement in myself or my marriage, but I don't know what to do. And so our purpose is to just make it super tangible that you can walk away from the episode and say, oh, I know exactly what I need to do next. And here's my conversation starter with my spouse and how we can work through this area together. And so that's really our heart behind it, that you would stick it out to the end and take these challenges to heart and put them into practice, because we just know, we truly believe that it will produce some really great fruit. So
yeah, we love, I just want to thank you guys for sticking around to the endings of these episodes, because I know, like we're talking about, there's a million things you could be doing, and you stuck out an entire 30-minute episode with us, and you do it over and over and over, and we love it.
Yeah, we are so appreciative of you guys. Thank you so much for coming week in and week out. Y'all are the real MVPs.
Oh, I was going to say that exact thing.
We say it at the same time. You ready? Y'all are the real MVPs.
And now everybody just got off for real. So we look forward to talking to y'all next week.
Bye.